Hi, everybody there at the MVP Days. This is a presentation, Azure Stack Development Kit, the cheap Azure development platform. My name is Carsten Rachfahl. I'm from Germany, as I'm sure you hear. And let's first talk a little bit about me, and then we dive into our topic. So I'm a Microsoft Cloud and Data Center Management MVP. I'm the organizer of the Cloud and Data Center Conference in Germany. I'm the co-founder of two German communities, the Hyper-V community and the Hybrid Cloud community. If you like to follow me a bit on social media, my Twitter handle is Hyper-V Server, and I'm one of the Hyper-V Amigos. You find our Hyper-V Amigo shows under hyper-v-amigos.net. And if I don't do community work, I'm the CEO of Rachfahl IT Solutions, GmbH and Co. KG, a German ISV, not ISV, a German SI, who implements all the great stuff I talk about, like Hyper-V failover clustering. Storage Spaces Direct is a huge one, and Azure Stack. And if you want to read my blog, it's under hyper-v-server.de, unfortunately in German. So let's dive into Azure Stack Development Kit. First, you have to recognize there are two editions of Azure Stack. There's the multi-node integrated system and there's the Azure Stack Development Kit. The multi-node integrated system you buy from an OEM. There are 7 in the moments where you can buy an integrated system. You get a 4 to 16 nodes scale unit, and you can put Azure workloads on that and use them, consume them, and you pay Microsoft for that. You can be a hoster and provide those services to your customers. The Azure Stack Development Kit, on the other side, is a free of charge download. You just download it from Microsoft. You can bring your own hardware, so you put it on a beefy server. If you use Azure resources in it, there is no charge involved, but on the other hand, it has no support in production. It's just a one node deployment, just for learning, testing, and so on. So, but the good thing is it's consistent with Azure Stack. So it has the same APIs, the same services, the same tooling. You get every month, in essence, you get a new Azure Stack Development Kit that is really the same as the Azure Stack integrated system, except it is running only on one node and you can't upgrade it. You don't have any HA there. So it's for learning, demoing, and if you want to develop your Azure applications or try out Azure, it's really a great start with not much investment. So where do you get it? It's a short link here. It's aka.ms/AZS-devkit. It's on the Eval Center. You download you get a downloader. It downloads 11, 12 files. It has approximately 11 gigabytes around that. And then you decompress the files and you get, I think, around 30 gigabyte of a Cloud Builder VHDX. And this VHDX you put on a hardware box. You boot from the hardware box, the VHDX, and then you can install Azure Stack Development Kit on the box. So what are the requirements for the hardware box? So at a minimum, you should have 5 disks in the hardware box. These 5 disks should be one for the operating system, at least 200 gigabytes, and 4 more should be around 200, maybe more. It depends on how much resources you want to deploy. The system should have at least 12 physical cores and 96 gigabytes of RAM. But with 96 gigabytes of RAM, you can't really deploy much resources. So it should have 128 or even more RAM. RAM is here of essence. So if you want to deploy, for example, app services heavily and play with them, maybe 256 gigabytes would be nicer. The system should be capable of Hyper-V, so it should be certified for Windows Server 2012 R2 or even better for 2016. But what if you don't have these hardware? I have another solution for you. Why not deploy Azure Stack in a the Azure Stack Development Kit in a virtual machine. And for that, we need nested virtualization, because the Azure Stack Development Kit uses Hyper-V and deploys a lot of virtual machines to bring Azure to you. So it's not one virtual machine. When it deploys, there are over 10 virtual machines and even a one node storage basis direct cluster. So what are the requirements for VM? So in essence, they are the same. You need a virtual machine with at least 96 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes of free memory. More is of course better. You need half a terabyte of disk space, because if you deploy Azure Stack Development Kit, it will at least consume 500 gigabytes. More is of course better. You need a virtual machine with 12 cores. So this is the first tweak. If you have only a 6-core host with hyperthreading, you can enable hyperthreading and you have 12 cores. And we have to have nested Hyper-V support in the system. So our host has to be a Windows 10 machine. You can enable Hyper-V there. I'm working on a Windows 10 machine and I have Azure Stack Development Kit deployed there, or a Windows Server 2016. So let's go to our first demo. I switched to Royal TS. That's a very nice remote desktop solution that can do so much more. So if you are interested in a nice solution, go to Royal TS. Here I am on one of my hypervisors. This is one node of a 3-node storage basis direct deployment with Hyper-V running. So you see here in the task manager, I have 20 cores. So it's a 10-core 2-socket machine with 40 logical processors, and I have 256 gigabytes of RAM in the machine, where 14 gigabytes are used. So if I open PowerShell, and here I have prepared already the deployment of an Azure Stack Development Kit in a virtual machine. I have a PowerShell script for that that's available on GitHub. I will give you the links later. And I kick off the deployment with the path to the Cloud Builder VHDX, with some IP addresses, with some passwords to connect the machine to Azure for the integrated, the Azure Stack Development Kit deployment in a connected scenario. It will now start here and bring up these virtual machine, add memory to it. If you see here in the settings, we have now 184,320 megabytes, so it's a 180 gigabyte machine. It will add disks here. It is already connected to the network. It will enable the VLAN here and so on. So this will take a while. And I jump now into an already deployed ASDK machine. I've deployed it some days ago, and here you see completed action deployment. So the script will create the virtual machine with everything you need, will create an unattended file, put it in the VHDX, started it, and it will also deploy the Azure Stack Development Kit in the virtual machine. After 6 to 8 hours, you see this in the virtual machine. And if we look here, this is a virtual machine. This is why we need to have nested virtualization enabled. Here you see, I think, 13 VMs. That is in essence Azure in a virtual machine. So if we now open an Internet Explorer, and I've done that already, and go to the admin portal, you see here that now Azure Stack is deployed in this machine. And if we can also open the tenant portal, portal.local.Azure Stack external, that should be HTTPS, of course, // we should also see the tenant portal that will open now. I'm already signed in as a user, so I think the question who I am will not appear. And this is the Azure Stack user portal. It will give us some more information here. So now we see here the user portal. But if we want to go, for example, now to create a resource, go to compute here, we have no virtual machines here. We have nothing in here. So nothing is deployed in the Azure Stack Development Kit. We have a running Azure Stack Development Kit, but there are no resources deployed. So in our next slides, we will talk about how we get resources deployed in our Azure Stack Development Kit. So back to the presentation. The question was, how do we get resources in our Azure Stack Development Kit? So first thing that is really great is the Azure Marketplace Syndication. So I think a lot of you are aware of Azure, the Microsoft public cloud offering, and there is a marketplace in Azure where you get a lot of third party, but also Microsoft ready to use, ready to deploy, let's call them artifacts. So you just go to the marketplace, say, I want this Windows Server, for example, or this Ubuntu server, or this firewall appliance, and it is just deployed in your subscription. And we have the same for Azure Stack. So if the ISV who is developing for Azure is also testing it with Azure Stack and says it's available in the Azure Marketplace syndication for Azure Stack, we can just do the same. And I like to show you that, of course. So we switch back to our virtual machine here. If we go to our admin portal in Azure Stack, and we go here to Marketplace Management, you see that we have to syndicate our Azure Stack with Azure. So we have to register our Azure Stack in Azure to use the Marketplace syndication. And this is a around 10-minute process, so I will not do that, but I will switch to another virtual machine that I have prepared here. It's another Azure Stack Development Kit where the registration in Azure has already happened, and I have also downloaded some artifacts already here. So you see here, if I go to Marketplace Management, we have a lot of artifacts here already downloaded from the Azure Stack Marketplace. And here you see the Windows Server 2012 R2 data center is just in the process of downloading, but it is 127 gigabytes, so that's a lot. It will take a while. So let's jump to the Azure Stack Marketplace syndication. And now the Azure Stack is connecting to Azure, to the Azure Marketplace, and looking for the marketplace items that are available now or today. And there are always new marketplace items coming into the Azure Marketplace syndication. So here you see we have a lot of, here's the scroll bar, a lot of artifacts here from backup vendors. We have additions to our virtual machines. We have Linux. We have some Microsoft resources. We have complete Linux distributions here like CentOS. We have Puppet on Puppet Enterprise solution template from Puppet itself. We have from Bitnami a lot of ready-to-use resources like LAM or CouchDB. There is so much stuff here, Kafka cluster, and it's going on and on and on. If you scroll through here, you find a lot of stuff you maybe want to use, like WordPress, Typo3, and much more. So how to get those resources? Let's just, for example, here take the Kubernetes cluster template from Microsoft. If we click on it, it opens, let's say, like an Euler, where you see how it's licensed and what to do with it. And then I click on download. And it takes a moment. We get a message here, downloading in progress. And if we go back to the marketplace here, you see now it's downloading here the Kubernetes cluster template. And after it's downloaded, all these resources are already available to our tenants, to our users in their user portal. So they are already usable. So if we go here to, for example, create a resource and go to compute, you see we have some compute resources here, like an Ubuntu server or SQL server or a Windows server pay as you go, uh, directly to deploy in our tenant. So the Azure Marketplace is one way to deploy resources, but there is more. So we have also the PaaS services. So if you want to deploy not only virtual machines or addition to virtual machines or already filled virtual machines with some resources, you maybe want to play as a developer, especially with the PaaS services. And the PaaS services are a little bit complicated to install. They are SQL resource provider like MySQL and SQL. Then we have the app services. You can have Azure Functions and on and on and on. There's a lot of stuff there. And a Microsoft employee, Matt McSpirit, has done a wonderful script that does all the work, getting all the stuff you really want into an Azure Stack Development Kit. And I will show you how to kick off the PaaS services or the config ASDK script and show you what you get after you have run it. So let's go back to the demos. I go back to this machine. So in this machine, or let's go back to, this is already deployed. Let's go back to our ASDK2 machine. So if we go here to this screen, this is what you see after the Azure Stack Development Kit is deployed and we have our infrastructure as a service running. So if you go now to additional software, this is something I added to the deployment. Here you find a configure Azure Stack POC PS1. And this is created by the PowerShell script I showed you where you deploy the Azure Stack Development Kit in a virtual machine. So if we type now config Azure Stack POC, it will download the script from Matt McSpirit, from the GitHub template, and it will start to deploy all the PaaS services like SQL services, web apps. It will create plans and offers. It will also install additional software in the virtual machine. So if you look here, there is nothing here. But if we go, for example, to another machine, let's say the 7 here, and let me sign in. Here you see when this script is finished, it will clean up a bit. I have done this already in preparation. So if we move this now, you see here there are more links on the desktop. Like it will also install the Chrome browser. It will install Visual Studio Code. And if we open Hyper-V here, so let's see here, Windows Administrative Tools. Somewhere here is Hyper-V. Here's the Hyper-V Manager. Let's open it. Let's go to this machine. Let's close the checkpoints here. And you see there are much more machines running here. We have 3 and an additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 11 more virtual machines. In total, it should be 24 machines. And these machines, we have added the PaaS services. Now let's switch to the developer side of things. So let's first start a tenant portal, for example, in an Internet Explorer, and an admin portal with Google Chrome. And I start that already because it takes a while. And now we switch back to the presentation and look at the first thing we can do with our fully deployed Azure Stack Development Kit. So if you are a developer, you have heard, I think at least, of ARM templates. ARM templates are JSON descriptions of resources that the Azure Resource Manager can understand. And of course, if you develop solutions, you have to give some ARM templates in your solution, so you have to add some ARM templates in there. So let's switch back to our Azure Stack Development Kit, and here we can go to create a resource if we want to play with ARM templates. Here under Customs, you find a template deployment. If you click on that, the built-in edit template, the built-in ARM template editor will open, and you see here an empty ARM template. But there is help. In Azure, you find a lot of quick start templates for Azure Stack. So if we click here, you see there is a lot of stuff here that you can see as a starting point to develop your own Azure Stack ARM templates or Azure templates. So we will start easy, and I will create a storage account. I click on the 101 create storage account, and it will open the template here in the editor. It's a short one. And then I will save it and edit the parameters. So we have a storage account type standard LRS, and we click on, we first have to create a resource group. So let's say test RG, and click on create. It will validate the template if everything is okay, and then it will deploy the ARM template, and after a while we will see under all resources we will see our storage account. So if we look now at all resources, we should see our storage account. Here it is. So this was a demo of how to deploy an ARM template. Let's switch back to the presentation. So we've done the demo already, and there is more. So when we deployed with the script from MadMaxSpirit, all the nice stuff there are also some PaaS services included. So we get SQL as a service and MySQL as a service, and there are the resource providers installed now in Azure Stack. And because we have not so much time left, I will only show you the deployment of a SQL database. So let's go back to our deployment here. If we are in our tenant portal, we can look here at data and storage, and here we see a MySQL database and a SQL database. And we click here. It will open lab, I think, and here we can give a name for a database. So let's say test SQL. We can choose a collection. We have to choose the size, and there is also a quota on this. So let's say I want a 25 megabyte database. So it says something. The size should be at least 64, so let's go for 100 megabytes. The subscription is Azure Stack, and I use the same resource group, local. I have to choose a SKU. So it's a standalone server, and I need a login to configure a login. So create a new login. Let's say database login is admin CR, and I choose a password. Okay, I type post time the same, and now I can click on create, and it will create a database for me. And the PaaS service is platform as a service, so we don't have to care about the SQL server that is running there. The SQL server is running by our Azure Stack operator. So he has to care about the SQL server, that it's patched and so on, that it's high available, and how we like to deploy it. But we as a developer, we only consume a SQL database. So in some minutes, the SQL database will be deployed and we can just use it in our application. So we get a connection string and we know already our password and our user, and then we can just use it in our applications. So as already said, if we go here to all resources, we have our test SQL. And here we see the connection string. And with the user and the password, you can just use the database. So going back to the presentation, this was a demo of the SQL provider. And we have a MySQL resource provider. And I will skip this demo, but in essence, it's the same as with the SQL provider. And then there are the app services and Azure functions. So what is the app services, or what are the main parts? We have web apps, we have mobile apps, we have API apps, we get the Azure functions, the Kubernetes cluster, Service Fabric, and there is much, much more. And with the rest of the time, I would like to do a demo where we look at a web application that we get from GitHub and put it in a web app. So let's go to the demo and deploy a web app. So here we are in the portal. I click on create a resource. I scroll down to web plus mobile and you see all the app services. I go to web app and I give it a name. Let's call it Pacman. No, let's call it Pacman. I use my existing resource group and I have to choose an app service plan. And I cheated a little bit. I created one already because it takes a lot of time, or at least some minutes, to create an app service plan. And now I'm deploying a web app called Pacman. And let's switch back to the slides and give you some information while this deployment is going on. So some useful ASDK resources. First, the link to my GitHub account where you find the PowerShell script to deploy Azure Stack Development Kit in a Hyper-V machine, and the GitHub account from MadMaxSpirit where you find the script to deploy the PaaS services, register Azure Stack in Azure, and get some plans and so on. If you like what you have seen, I do a webinar every month in English, and here you find the link to my webinar archive. So let's go back to the deployment here. Let's have a refresh if the web app is deployed. Yes, here we see Pacman. I click on it. And now we have to deploy something in it. So here we go to deployment options. And here we can choose, for example, a repository, an external repository. And it works with Git and Mercurial. I only know Git, you maybe got that. And here I have a nice link to a GitHub account of Dino Bordonaro. He is a friend of mine. He's very knowledgeable about Azure Stack, and he has a Pacman clone in his archive. So I use this link to deploy Pacman into this web app. So now if we go here to deployment options, we hopefully will see how nothing is happening here. Let's go again here to overview. Here we see the GitHub. So it's just a refresh here. Now it's getting from GitHub, it's getting the deployment. And if we go to overview and to browse, we will first see the standard HTML site that is deployed. No, Pacman is here already. So we can now play Pacman in our app service. You see here, I can play Pacman, a good old arcade game. So thank you very much for your attendance. I hope you have a nice MVP days with the other presentations, and maybe I see you soon in a webinar or somewhere else. Bye-bye.